Welcome, everyone. Outdoor Ethics Roundtable. And we're going to talk about outdoor ethics at Camporees.
If you look down in the very right corner of the slide that is on your screen, there is a link to a poll EV. If you would go there, go to pollev.com and /Matthew Durra, D-U-R-R-A 146. And you can answer that poll there for our opening quiz. It'll ask you a question: what makes an event a wow for you and other scouts? And you can answer that as many times as you want. What makes an event a wow for you and other scouts? There. So this is a word cloud. The ones that show up in the biggest font are the ones that occur the most often. So this is kind of just a little icebreaker activity to see what it is that you all feel makes a camporee have that wow factor. And we're getting some great results here. With that said, let's go ahead and continue on with the program for tonight. But it looks like we've got a lot of common things here. High adventures, a fun program. We've got orientation or participation, accomplishment, hiking, all kinds of great things. So hopefully we can add a little bit more to that as we go through the presentation tonight.
All right, we're going to cover on our agenda. We just had our opening. We'll have a safety moment. We're going to introduce our staff. Our main presentation tonight is the outdoor ethics at a camporee. And that was created by Michelle Bernstadt and will be presented by our team as well as Dr. Jeff Marion from Virginia Tech. We'll have some time for question and answer. We'll have some announcements and then we'll have some social time. Slide. All right, everybody, please join me. Scout sign or pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll do the Scout Oath next. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. The Outdoor Code. As an American, I will do my best to do my duty, to be clean in my outdoor manners, to be careful with fire, to be considerate in the outdoors, and be conservation minded. 2. All right, Paula, it's up to you now. Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce the work group for the Roundtable work group, and that you just met Ann Cantola. She's from a council in Northern California. And up on that top row, that as I can see them, is Paul Shimke. He sent you all those invitations to come tonight. And he is from NCAC. And up on the top also is Jeff Marion, our big star for tonight. And we're just delighted to have him with us. And Matt Duran, who talked to you earlier with the game, and he is from CWC Crossroads of the West. And where are you? Scott Anderson, the big cheese of our group, is being a great scout tonight and helping us with running the PowerPoint. And Anne is there, and who else? Who's missing? Chandra, and who did I miss? Speak up now or forever hold your peace. Okay, then we're all here.
Mark Hammer, who's doing our recording.
And Mark Hammer, who taught Paul well, so Paul could do those invitations, and we appreciate all the help that we get from the webmaster. Okay, so I'm entrusted tonight with a safety moment, and courtesy of Leave No Trace, Back to Basics, Wildfire Toolkit. Those of you who get the newsletter, read it. It was a very good one this time. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about wildfire safety. Across America, the fire season is again upon us. Experts warn of another destructive fire season. Because of the intense droughts, shifting weather conditions, and above average temperatures, wildfires can burn through almost anything, any outdoor area, and be extremely unpredictable in their movements. While wildfires can burn almost anywhere on the landscape, the American West is especially vulnerable to the wildfires, posing a serious threat to people, water sources, and air quality. I saw a chart that had some stats on fires, and there were wildfires in Florida and Texas, so it's not just the West that's burning, it's all over. According to the U.S. Department of the Interior, as many as 90% of wildland fires in the U.S. are caused by people. If 90% of the fires are caused by people, humans, 90% of the fire are preventable by humans and human behavior. Next slide, please. Oops. Okay, so I will see to it that you get the slides that were coming next. We have it's a little bit about plan ahead and prepare, especially about having permits, etc., for fires. We're trying to teach behavior more so than anything else, because the behavior and safety built into ourselves and others make everything work better, especially when it comes to wildfires. As they said, 90% are by humans. So we also have, the second one was use a prepared fire pit, one that is stable. Make sure you have a permit to use it. And the last one was, what do you think? I think it was make sure your fire is dead out. Thank you very much. Matt, that's you.
So, welcome to camp. If you have planned or participated in any kind of camporee that had a strong outdoor ethics emphasis, we'd like you to make a comment about it in the chat so that we can take a look at it and add that to our discussion. Because we have our experiences that we're bringing here. We want to know about your experiences that you've had in your various councils around the country, because there's maybe things that you have experienced or come up with that we might not know about. And so one of the greatest things about having a roundtable is the ability to share these ideas. So if you've got any ideas, post them in the chat, and we've got a few people monitoring those, the chat, as we go along, to get any kind of questions or any kind of comments out there so that we can have a discussion. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so one of the things that we constantly bump into when we talk about outdoor ethics in general, or when we have an outdoor ethics camporee, if you pitch the idea and you're almost guaranteed to get somebody that says, well, you know, isn't Leave No Trace just picking up trash? We know all about that. We do that all the time. Why do we need a whole camp about picking up trash? And it's a great time to have a little bit of reminder that Leave No Trace and outdoor ethics in general is far more than picking up trash. It's Leave No Trace as an organization or as an idea goes all the way back to the 1960s and even earlier, the concept of outdoor ethics and minimum impact camping. So this little timeline right here is just a reminder that it's far more than picking up trash. So in the 60s, the Leave No Trace idea with that general wording was formed by the U.S. Forest Service. In the 70s, it was joined by the other federal land managers, the BLM, the National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, and in the 1980s, they kind of started to create more of an official program around no trace camping and leave no trace land ethics. In the 90s, the Forest Service worked with NOLS, or the National Outdoor Leadership School, to create a minimum impact training program, and they started offering courses in leave no trace. And then in 1994, the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics was incorporated as a 501c3. So it went out of the purview of the federal agencies to become what it is today, the nonprofit Center for Outdoor Ethics. And obviously, it still interacts a great deal with those federal agencies and with other organizations such as the BSA. But it's a lot more than just picking up trash. It has a long history, and it covers the entire umbrella of outdoor ethics and everything, the behavior that we hope to model in the outdoors. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So just another reminder here, remember, Leave No Trace is not a set of rules or regulations. It's not codified into a bunch of laws administered by the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. There may be places where some of them are very close to laws on the books, but remember, these are guidelines to help us make better decisions in the outdoors. So it's remember, it's an ethic. It's a way of making choices, and an attitude or a set of flexible guiding principles. And then sorry, I got kids fighting in the background. Anyways, and then it's a way of helping us to remember to be considerate of other outdoor users, because remember, we're not the only ones that are out there in the outdoors. With our scout groups, oftentimes we are the larger groups, and we need to be cognizant of that as well. So again, they're guidelines to help us make better decisions. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
At this stage, address the passengers over the PA.
Just a reminder, if you are in here, we'd ask that you mute your microphones so that we cannot get any feedback or any unwanted sounds. All right, so at this point, we're going to turn the time over to Dr. Jeff Marion. Many of you have heard of Dr. Marion before. He literally wrote the book on Leave No Trace. He works for the USGS and also teaches at Virginia Tech, and does a lot of research in recreation ecology. He's a recreation ecologist. And so we're going to turn the time over to him for his section of the slideshow to talk about some of the impacts that large group use can have on the outdoors, because that's something that we want to definitely pay attention to. When we have any kind of camporee in the outdoors, the more people you have, the more of an impact it can possibly have as well. So we'll turn the time over to you, Jeff, to take it to your slideshow.
Great, thanks so much, appreciate that. I have done some studies on large groups. In particular, the National Park Service contracted with me to do a study looking at how to develop appropriate, sustainable practices for managing large special events in the national parks. And so what I did tonight is I created, I think it's maybe 7 or 8 slides that I'm going to share with you that just sort of highlight some of our findings and recommendations to the Park Service, which I think are also appropriate and relevant to the Boy Scouts in running large special events like Camporees. And so the first thing to recognize is that when you have, extremely large numbers of people together, there can be some rather dire impacts. Most of them are trampling related. And so we're talking about trampling of vegetation, trampling of soils and things. And you can see from the chart here that there are, sort of specific kinds of impacts to vegetation and soil that we're concerned in trying to avoid. And so what we're going to talk about tonight are some ways that you can help to either avoid those impacts or minimize those impacts. So next slide, please. And the place to start really is with this sort of a science figure that has come out of a lot of our recreation ecology or our visitor impact studies, looking at the trampling of plants and soils by people, often on trails or at campsites and other areas where they concentrate, for example, to cook dinner. And what we've learned is that the majority of these impacts to vegetation and soils occur with fairly initial and low levels of use or trampling activity. And given that that's the case, the best strategy for minimizing the impacts of large groups of people is to really concentrate them on the most durable surfaces available. And so if you've got hundreds of people showing up and you can stage them in a parking lot, for example, and set up, cooking or maybe the most intensive activities on a durable paved surface. If you've got people moving from one place to another, if you can have them do that along, gravel roads or paved roads or dirt roads or existing trails, that's going to be your best bet. So using and concentrating the activity, in these sorts of already developed or already hardened areas. And there is potentially a dispersal strategy. I'm going to talk just very briefly about when we do orienteering, and we often send people, running through the woods in various places. And that's perhaps the one activity that I can think of where you could have a large event and maybe try to go the other direction, which is to disperse activity and spread out as widely as possible. Again, still looking for durable surfaces if possible, like non-vegetated areas, for example. So next slide, we'll go through a number of bullet points here that I had laid out that will kind of capture the essence of what was in my report to the National Park Service for large special events. So the first one I've already covered a bit, which is to concentrate or contain the activities of this large event, this camporee, to a footprint of existing infrastructure. So places where we already have a lot of pavement or gravel or durable surfaces of any type. As you see here on the lower right, that's an image from the JFK race, which is held over in the Maryland area each year. And they have thousands and thousands of people that show up to spectate, and they try to keep them on existing roads and on paved areas and things like that. You'll see some more pictures here in a minute. The second bullet here is to educate or regulate visitors to try to avoid or minimize the impacts. And so trying to get the word out that, hey, if you're moving from one place to another, do it on a trail or a road. Concentrate all of your traffic on the most durable surface available, and educating with various other leave no trace practices about just go through the whole gamut, each principle. So for example, if you're cooking, you need to dispose of the trash and any food waste properly. Going to the bathroom, we need to have bathroom facilities, and that's actually our next point here, or bullet point is having facilities that are going to be important. And so obviously restroom facilities like portable restrooms, porta-johns, having trash facilities, having a place where maybe you can recycle items that can be recycled. All of these kinds of things. And there is some literature online, if you search it out, about zero waste events. If you search on that keyword, zero waste events, you'll find a lot of information about, hey, having people bring stuff in Tupperware and take that home and wash it, not using styrofoam cups and having people bring their own mugs. All of those kinds of things that can help you reduce, to an absolute minimum, the amount of trash that might be generated by a large special event. So facilities are important. Another is scheduling that event in terms of its timing to either avoid or minimize impact. So perhaps avoiding the rainy season when soils are wet and the damage of that trampoline activity and any cars that might need to go off-road would be minimized. And so having an event in July, for example, when the soils are bone dry, is going to be a much better option. And the plants will, in many cases, have already perhaps senesced. And so the timing is important. The timing is also important to minimize impacts to other visitors. And so, having an event that, in a state park, for example, trying to avoid the high use weekends for that state park, maybe picking a low use weekend or even a weekday if that's possible. Avoiding sensitive areas, just as it says, looking with the land managers, the agencies that you're working with, and maybe even be a farmer, but trying to identify, are there any places here where we're going to have our event that really ought to be off limits, that we ought to maybe fence or sign and just make them off limits because there's nesting birds, or this is where the deer hang out, or maybe some rare and endangered species even. And then finally, minimizing impacts to sort of the non-group visitors, the regular visitors that might be in a state park, for example. Could we have our event in an area of that state park that the regular visitors just generally don't go, like a big mowed field? Maybe it's a hay field for a farmer, and so you can, perhaps again schedule that event after they've cut their hay, so that they can get a great, baling of hay before your big event is going to trample down all the grasses. So those are some of the key points that came out of our research. And what I'm going to do now is sort of run through just a few more slides to illustrate these and also talk about that dispersal option. So next slide, please. So facility sustainability is an important factor. If you look at the upper right-hand photo, for example, parking on the side of a road that has pavement and maybe a little bit of grass under a couple of tires, that's fine. One concern there, though, is the safety of people. If you can, again, have the authority and the control over the people showing up, such that they've been warned, hey, if you park on the side of the road, please try to walk on the grass, not on the pavement as you come down the road to the event. Walking in that pavement puts you out in the traffic. And on the lower left, it's a park that already has an infrastructure of paved and graveled trails and things. And we ought to set up our event so that we can make use of that infrastructure. On the right, lower right is it's the C&O towpath, the canal route, and they've set up their drink station for the big JFK, marathon race, so that they're already on sort of the surface, the durable surface of the towpath, and the runners can still get by, get their drinks, and move on. And so they're on a fairly durable surface. Next slide, please. Here, if you do have to go into more of a backcountry setting and use trails, for example, a sustainable trail looks like the one on the lower left. It's a side hill trail, and you could put a lot of people on that trail, but the terrain itself keeps them in single file, and that's really what you want. The terrain on the other two, in one case it's wet, muddy soils, in another case it's a big, huge flat meadow where there's nothing that would inhibit people from spreading out. Next slide. Parking cars is a big part of large special events. And again, if you can put them on roadsides, that's perhaps the best, as long as you can control visitor safety. Putting them in a big, huge farmer's field or a mowed field, perhaps is fine, but only if there's not going to be a big rain event. If you have a large rain event and you're planning on putting all those people into a mowed field like this, you could end up with some really nasty ruts. And the lower picture on the right, shows you an example of a rut that happened from this big special event, and there was no rain involved. Someone still managed to get stuck, I guess. But at any rate, being prepared for a big rain event just before or during your event is really key. And so having people come in and drop off all their camping gear, it would be best if they then move their vehicles out of that area. And then if there was a rain event, people would have to be prepared to carry all that stuff out of the field without their vehicles. Next slide, please. And I mentioned before, there is one option here for dispersal, and that's with orienteering. And we often do this as part of, camporees and jamborees and things like that. And so if you do have an area, preferably sort of like dense woods that doesn't have a lot of ground vegetation, could be a good place, as long as there aren't rare and endangered species, or you can set up, if you look in this particular national park picture where they had this event, they scheduled it in July, which was after a lot of the plants have created seeds, flowers, and senesced. Or you could schedule it even better in the fall or winter. But you can see in the lower area, some of these hashed areas are wetlands, and they carefully designed the routes and the control points so that people would not be running through the wetlands. And you can sort of see, we actually gave people GPS units to run with, and you can see that they did in fact safely avoid those wetlands. Next slide. And we did a bit of research on this. You can see before and after pictures. There were some of these control points that were used for the beginner, intermediate, and advanced courses, all three. And those particular control points did get hammered, and this is one of those. You can see that the organic litter was greatly pulverized and removed, exposing some bare soil. And so even a dispersal strategy, if you don't achieve a high level of dispersal, it's an unsuccessful strategy. And that was the case, at least with some of the control points that were used more intensively. Next slide. And then finally, sort of the management ability, or the capacity to deal with things. Are you going to have, if you're planning such a large event, a jamboree or camporee, the ability to do some good pre-event planning and think about all of these things that I've just covered. The event management capacity, like how many people you're going to have that will be out there directing traffic and telling people what to do, and educating people and all of that kind of stuff. What can be done beforehand, what has to be done on the event or during the event, and how many people can you realistically handle, sort of as a capacity of the event. How many people do you have facilities for, and thinking about those sorts of things. And then finally, planning out your post-event cleanup and restoration of the area. We'd like to, go back and return to these state parks and farmers' fields and things like that we're visiting for these large camporees. And if we don't do a good job, they won't allow us to come back. And so we want to make sure that we've carefully thought out everything, planned everything well, executed everything well, and then we've done some post-event cleanup and restoration work if needed. And I think that's it. Next slide. Yeah, so I'll stick around if you have any questions on any of the topics that I covered, but now we'll move on to sort of the date planner for a successful event.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So I just want to bring up the point that when we plan an outdoor ethics-based camporee, the reason that we had Jeff present what he did is we really want to make sure that we walk the walk, because if we can have this wonderful outdoor ethics leave no trace camporee and teach all of this stuff, but in the end, if we've totally destroyed the area where we're in, have we really done what we set out to do? And so pre-planning and thinking about the impact that our camporees and our activities have beforehand is an important part of setting the example and, showing everyone that we really do care about where we're camping and what we're trying to teach. And in many ways that can help enhance your program as well, because you can use that to help teach things or help to your activities that you do, use the things that you've planned out in that way to minimize your impact as part of your activities. So the next couple of things that we want to talk about here, number one, this date planner, and then program ideas, because we know most, if not all of you, have come here for program ideas to create that wow factor for an outdoor ethics camporee. So this little chart on your screen, we'll go through this really quick, but you've probably seen this in many different formats, because for any activity or training that we plan in the BSA, we generally have this backdating calendar that we look at. How many months out should I do each task? So for a camporee like this, you'll probably want to start thinking about it and generating ideas and start motion on it anywhere from 12 to 18 months out, so a year to a year and a half. And it starts with your camping and program committee in the council or the district. And this is where you can propose the theme of an outdoor ethics campout. And if you come prepared with some program ideas or reasons why this would be appropriate for your district or your council, you can probably win people over to that idea. So this is where you're going to start writing the program book. This is where you're going to meet with the short-term end camp chair, because remember, as a council district sponsored activity, you do need to have a short-term camp administrator that approves it and that does all the necessary paperwork and helps you go through that process to get it approved. So about 9 to 12 months out, that's when you want to have the budget issues taken care of. Budget issues are extremely important. With everything else fun that we do, please remember, if the budget's not in place, if you're wildly over budget, or if you haven't budgeted, that is a non-starter. You want to make sure that everything operates within the budget. It's extremely crucial right now. So once you have your budget outlined, please make sure that it is in the black, that it's not running at a deficit, and that when you actually run it, it stays in the black. You also want to make sure that your leader's guide is created about this time, and that you are confirming the camping area. So if it's a council property or private property or a public setting, you want to make sure that that is reserved and ready to go, and that your short-term camp administrator has visited it and approved it and signed off with everything with the council. And about this time is when you want to start making sure that the registrations are open and that you have your event staffed. I think we've all probably had events where it's the very last moment and we're still scrambling to try and find somebody to teach this station. And it's the day before and we're wringing our hands wondering if anyone's going to show up. Now, obviously, emergencies happen. You want to make sure you have good backup plan, have several people at each station, but this is where you want to start working on that. And then 3 to 9 months out, order all your supplies, make sure all your volunteers are registered and have their youth protection training, and where you want to start training your volunteers that are going to help you out. And then within the last month, this is where you're going to do your final walkthroughs of the camp. Make sure that you have it set up so you can avoid the impacts that we talked about with Dr. Marion's presentation, and just make sure all of your last minute logistics are set up, and make sure that that short-term camp administrator inspects the camp, checks it off, and make sure that you're ready to go with that. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about some program ideas. This is the fun part. This is where we get that wow factor for your camporee. And you've probably seen this put out by the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics, the Bigfoot campaign. Bigfoot's been doing it for years. Bigfoot is an expert on Leave No Trace. And this is a wonderful way using this or thinking ideas along or thinking about things along this line of thinking with Bigfoot is a great way to make an outdoor ethics camporee both fun and have that Leave No Trace theme. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is just some information about Sasquatch from around the world. He has different names in different parts of the world: the Yeti, the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, and many others. But he's kind of a universally recognized creature. And no matter where you go, he's hard to track down because of how good he is at leaving no trace. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So a couple resources that are going to be indispensable, especially for the Leave No Trace side of things, is many of you have heard about the Bigfoot Playbook, Bigfoot's Playbook. I'm actually holding it up. If you can see my little screen, I'm holding it up in front of me. This is available at lnt.org, or the 101 Ways to Teach Leave No Trace. These come with pre-made activities for each of the 7 principles of Leave No Trace. They make excellent round-robin camp stations or a theme in general. So if you look, here's a list of ideas or things that you can use to create that outdoor ethics theme. So games with a purpose, we know that everything we do in scouting should have a purpose. All the games have a purpose. Scouting is a game with a purpose. And then one of the coolest things is Bigfoot Boot Camp or Bigfoot Challenge. I served as a camp director a couple of years ago, and at my camp we had something called the Bigfoot Challenge, and it was basically an obstacle course where they had to make it through the obstacles, but they had to leave no trace while doing it, and they had to live the principles. There were different activities out of the Bigfoot, the Bigfoot playbook that they had to accomplish in order to pass through that that obstacle course. Another great one that's really popular these days is Zombie Apocalypse. How better to emphasize outdoor ethics than to talk about planning ahead and preparing, because that's what we do for a zombie apocalypse, right? And then when the apocalypse hit, you don't want the zombies to be able to track you down. So you've got to leave no trace if you want to stay alive, quote unquote, during the zombie apocalypse. But there's some great activities that you can do that align with that. And give it that wow factor, because what, 12, 13-year-old kid doesn't want to go to a zombie apocalypse camp? How cool is that? Be prepared to survive the apocalypse and make sure that those zombies can't track you down as you go through that. Every day, leave no trace, focusing on ways that you can practice leave no trace in small ways at home, and everywhere that you go, and thinking of it as an everyday practice, because that's really what we want to get into the mindset of everyone, is that, leave no trace is not that thing that we should just think about when we're out camping or whatnot. We want it to be who we are and what we do. It's just second nature in the BSA. That's just everywhere we go, we practice leave no trace. And then some other things that you could have for themes is Walk with Sasquatch, The Amazing Race, Are You Prepared, and Surviving the Ice Age Winter Camporee. So these can be integrated with camporee ideas and things that you've probably already seen and probably have already done at some point. It's just putting a different spin on it. And again, those resources, the 101 Ways to Teach Leave No Trace and the Bigfoot's Playbook, are great because they tell you what kind of group size each activity is good for. It breaks it down into the 7 principles. And it talks about the age appropriateness for each of those activities that are presented in there. You can also find Bigfoot's Playbook, a lot of it available in a PDF format at lnt.org as well. Now, another thing, because we're talking about outdoor ethics, remember the outdoor ethics of the BSA includes leave no trace, but it also includes tread lightly and the land ethic. And so you can also include aspects from those programs as well as appropriate. So a great example is if you're going to have, say, shooting sports at your outdoor ethics themed camporee, Leave No Trace doesn't really do a whole lot with shooting sports, but Tread Lightly has a lot of great resources about shooting sports and a lot of great education on minimizing your impact while participating in shooting sports. So that would be a great place to include some information from Tread Lightly if you were going to have shooting sports at your camporee. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Now, in addition to just having games like round robin style or obstacle courses or things like that, you may want to be cognizant of your older scouts and adults that would want to have some actual training. So you could conceivably conduct a Leave No Trace trainer course as long as you've got a master educator there and you've got 16 hours to do that. A lot of times that kind of makes the leaders more enthusiastic about being there when they can go and they can get some hands-on training as well and participate in an activity like that. Another thing, we'll scratch the Outdoor Ethics Guide course. There's not necessarily a course specific for the Outdoor Ethics Guide position, but what you could put in there is a BSA Leave No Trace 101 course. The BSA Leave No Trace 101 course is a 3 to 4 hour course that's the equivalent of what the Leave No Trace Center would call an awareness workshop. It has its own training code within the BSA. It's D74. And that's a great one to give older scouts and adults or really anyone. This one doesn't have a 14-year-old age limit like the trainer course does. But it's a great course to give them some hands-on experience and knowledge, practical knowledge about Leave No Trace in the outdoors so that they can go out and start using it in their outings. An Outdoor Ethics Orientation course is a similar course. That would be a great one as well. And that one focuses on the full outdoor ethics. It's an introduction to the outdoor ethics program of the BSA. So it includes information about all of the components that are in the outdoor ethics program. So it will include information about Leave No Trace, about Tread Lightly, and about the land ethic in there. The BSA Leave No Trace 101 course is specific to Leave No Trace. And then, of course, you can also include activities to help scouts and scouters achieve the Outdoor Ethics Action Award. Again, those are all information about that. It's all available at outdoorethics-bsa.org, the Outdoor Ethics Awareness and Action Award. But those are great things to center camps around, is passing off those requirements in that. And all of the things that we've talked about, all of the activities and all of these courses can help a scout or scouter achieve that award. All right, go ahead and go on to the next slide. So here's some examples of some activities that you could do that are based on Leave No Trace. And we have one for each principle up here. And this is just an example. And these are all pulled from the Bigfoot's Playbook or 101 Ways to Teach Leave No Trace. So for example, plan ahead and prepare. You could have a map reading exercise. Now, that's not unheard of. I'm sure all of you have been to a camporee at some point where we've had a map reading exercise where we talked about maps and compasses. But in this case, we're going to tailor that so that we talk about the perils of poor planning. Okay, so if we don't know how to read a map and don't know where we're going, we could run into trouble. We might not be able to find our campsite. We might end up in areas that are, can't sustain the impact that we would create in that area. We may end up in a bad weather area and not be able to get out of that. And so we're going to talk about the skills of reading a map and a compass, but also develop a written plan for a hike or a camping experience. To emphasize, well, how are we going to dispose of our waste properly, or how are we going to travel and camp on durable surfaces? Let's plan our route appropriately. And then as part of that, the part of the activity, you could have an orienteering course, but making sure that that orienteering course is perhaps sticking to durable surfaces or something. We've planned it out so that it does that. So that's a great example for that one. Dispose of waste properly is a great one as well. What to do with the poo. That always, any station that would have that as a title will always grab the attention of any scout that I can think of. And so this would be a great one. Well, how far exactly is 200 feet? We know that that's the guideline for disposing of waste, we need to be 200 feet away from trails and campsites and water sources, but how far exactly is that? And so you could have a competition for scouts to, you have it pre-measured out, so you know where it is, but have a competition to see how close the scouts can get to that 200-foot mark. Some of them may get pretty close. Some of them may be way off with how far they think that is. And so just like any other activity you could have, you could turn it into a competition. How far is that 200 feet and where is it appropriate to dig that cat hole? Okay. You can also have a campsite inspection that checks to see if, one of those side activities, the side quest of the camp, are you disposing of your waste properly? You get points if your camp is set up to dispose of that waste properly. Some great examples of activities that you can do with these particular principles. Let's go over to the next slide. There's some more examples on that next page. We talked a little bit about the durable surfaces quite a bit, and they can all kind of bleed into each other and dovetail like that. Like, let's see the small fire. So every camporee we've ever been to has probably had some kind of fire starting activity, but has it had one that is based around leave no trace, maybe a mound fire? Okay, constructing a proper mound fire, not just being able to build a fire, but being able to build a proper fire in a leave no trace way, or perhaps finding alternatives for fires as well. Okay, a lot of different ways that we can gear it towards leave no trace and towards outdoor ethics. And then be considerate of other visitors. This is a great one that goes along well with the Bigfoot theme or with the zombie apocalypse. How quietly can you move through the woods? Or how much can you blend in with what's going on around you and not disturbing others? Because we don't want those zombies to hear us. We don't want those zombies to see us. Or if we're being Sasquatch, we want to move through the woods without being in that photograph. So that's the top right column there or box is a great one, because every photo you've ever seen of a Bigfoot is blurry and it's not quite clear and he's blending in. How close can we be to replicating that photo of being blurry and perhaps not sticking out and disturbing the experience of other people? So these are just a handful of ideas, and I see that there's quite a few great ones in the chat box over here. Later on in the Q&A, we can probably discuss a few of those. But again, keep in mind the 101 Ways to Teach Leave No Trace and the Bigfoot's Playbook. Let's go to the next slide. Before we go on to this, there was a slide in here before, but we missed it. Another thing to not discount is using your resources around you as far as land managers go. Some of you may be located near national parks or national forest or BLM or state parks or things like that. Those agencies have a great deal of resources that can help you out with this, and they can lend those resources and those people to you to help with this. A great example of this is here in Utah. We're very, very close to 9 federally managed wilderness areas in the national forest here. One of our camps literally borders, or actually a few of our camps literally border those designated wildernesses. And we, with the Forest Service, created this partnership where we came up with a patch set where there was a certain thing that they had to do, or they had to prepare an activity to go into the wilderness, and they could earn that patch set. And we had a great success with that. So that slide wasn't included in here. Unfortunately, I wanted to show you that patch set, but we're going to turn it back over to Paul to talk about some additional resources that you can get or that can help you out with a camporee.
All right. Well, first off, as Matt said, Bigfoot's Playbook. First place I'd turn for just about anything. And there's activities in here, but remember that these are inspirations. So use these as inspirations, not just as I've got to do it the way it is in the book. It's an inspiration. You can find a lot of great ideas by doing that. The 101 Ways is also a great resource that way. And you can see all my books. I got tabs everywhere in these things. Another one you can download for free from the BSA website is the Teaching Leave No Trace book. I've got the, I made it into a dead tree book here, but you can also see it online as a PDF. So that's on scouting.org. You can see that. The Leave No Trace site has peak packs. So peak packs are basically activities in a kit. So here we've got a Velcro closed bag here, and this is for a Leave No Trace relay. So here's the instructions for it. The materials for it are in the bag. It's all self-packaged and ready to go. Then what else was I going to look at here? Okay, the other thing I'm going to do right now is you've seen a bunch of links here. Let me paste all these there in the chat window. So all these links here, they're on the screen, and the ones that Matt showed you before, here they all are on the chat window, so you can copy them right now. You don't have to wait till this gets posted to the website. So there's a lot of good information out there. I think this is great. And just remember that you're looking for inspirations from other people, because you can always take stuff and make even better stuff out of what you did. What other people have done, I should say. Anyway, if you could go to the next slides, please, Scott. Okay, another thing is Scouts work for blame. Okay, awards and prizes are great. So Matt talked about this a little bit going in here, but at the beginning of the Camporee, talk about having some awards you set up. So here's some ideas. There's a Bigfoot award. So that Bigfoot award will go to the patrol that earns the most points at the station. You can do, if you can find somebody, if somebody has a Bigfoot costume, just think of the fun things you can do with Bigfoot showing up in different places and or in some skits. That would be, that'd be great. You can do some things that are aim more towards service projects. So outdoor ethics related service projects can be part of the Camporee as well, and give an award for the people who participate in that. Have the units try to come up with how can we show our outdoor ethics in our campsite, and have a competition between the units to see how they can do it. Have a Bright Idea Award. And this was brought up before by Matt, but don't forget, you could offer the Outdoor Ethics Award, or at least help people towards earning it with some of the activities that are offered at the Camporee. So those are some good ideas there. And the next slide, please. All right. And with this point, this is time for you guys to ask some questions. So how do you think we ought to do this? I should ask this question beforehand, but I would say if you could just put some questions in the chat, we'll take a look at them, and then we'll call on somebody and we'll ask you to open up the mic and we can go through the question. How does that work? So if you could just put something in the chat window.
Guessing they want to get something to eat. And of course, when I came in, my blood pressure shot up to 157/91.
Okay.
It's funny, they have a question and answer period. Nobody's answered. They're just type it into the chat. No one's done it.
No questions. Since when does that happen? Has anybody got anything that you'd like to share? I mean, this is not just the time for questions and answers. I mean, answers can come from you guys as well as from us.
There's a couple things in the chat. we just got a comment, says, I teach LNT emphasizing time and money savings to get their attention. A couple months ago, we had Andrew Leary from the Leave No Trace Center present, and that was one of the things that he talked about as well, is how outdoor ethics and practicing Leave No Trace can actually save your council or your camp a lot of time and money. You know, based on especially, you know, like food waste and things like that. So that's a great idea, and that will definitely get people's attention.
So I think a lot of people go in thinking that you know, outdoor ethics event has to be something that's completely separate from what we normally do, and it's not. It's really, it is what we normally do. This is our ethic as scouts, and how do we show that, and how do we put that up front and get people to enjoy it. All right. I don't want to cut people off. I don't want to just make the silence linger forever as well. So,
well, Paul, do you want me to give examples of my comment about saving time and money?
that'd be great, Gary. Yeah, thanks.
I'll give two examples. One is campfire. They're supposed to use little sticks. I teach people to have all the scouts collect the little sticks all around them, and then they can all participate by putting the little sticks based on the fire warden's direction onto the fire. That gets them involved, and they keep the fire small, and they don't have to use their axe tools or their saws or drag big logs out of the woods. And for food, I teach them to use food that generates less grease or waste, like never cook with cheese. So that means that your 3-pot method uses a lot less water, which means you spend a lot less gas heating the water up, and your cleanup occurs right after your meal instead of an hour later when the water finally gets hot, that kind of thing.
Excellent. And cleanup's easier. That's always a big sell for the scouts. Easier cleanup is always, that's better than saving money.
And of course, they save all the silverware they don't throw in the woods when the poor little scout has to dump the water at the end of the day.
Paul, we had another comment earlier from Omar Lopez, an idea to have Leave No Trace memory game cards. Omar, do you want to tell us a little bit about that idea? If you're here.
Good night to everybody. Yeah, I was a few months ago at surfing in the web of Leave No Trace, and I found memory cards for the kids for the part of recycling and trash, to trash, and I downloaded the memory cards so I can print it and use it with the pack so they can have fun and learn at the same time.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes. Jeff, you want to talk about what you just posted?
Yeah, so I'm not by any means an expert in this, but when we were talking about the Park Service large special events, I came across the zero waste event literature, and there's quite a few websites, and I think I've copied maybe 3 here, but that was sort of a hasty search and copy. There's probably some perhaps even better ones that I've omitted here. So do go out and look in the literature. You know, these are, you know, big music festivals, for example, and you've probably all heard of the Burning Man, you know, celebration that's out west every year. There's been a lot of, you know, super smart people pay a lot of attention to this issue of how do we host and manage really large special events and avoid or minimize the impacts. And And so there's a lot of really good tips. Some of it's, pretty much, very similar to the Leave No Trace program, but part of it is very much oriented to how do you do events with large numbers of people. And so at any rate, check out that literature. There is some new stuff there that is in fact different from the Leave No Trace practices and the educational programs that we're all familiar with.
Right. Did you see anything else there, Matt? I'm looking through here. I haven't spotted anything else.
I haven't spotted anything
Okay.
else really.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. If we could go to the next slide, please, Scott. All right. Hey, feedback is a gift, and please share your feedback with us. We'd like to know what you think of tonight, and in particular, we'd like to hear if you've got any ideas for future roundtables. We are always looking for great ideas, and they're best ideas if they come from people like you, who are the people who are, our audience. That's what we're really looking for. So you can, if you've got your phone handy, you can scan the screen here, and it'll go right there, and you can do the questionnaire now. I'll be sending out a request for your feedback and later on, and so you can go that way as well. So if you would please do that for us, we would greatly appreciate it. It helps us so much, and I think it helps us to help you too. So thanks so much. And with that, I think
I have something to share.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'd like to have everybody remember that we just have the summer. I believe it's been extended to October, the summer of service, and 50 years of SOAR. And then there's also the 50 years of the Environmental Protection Agency award that's out there, and it's only for 1 year. So if you're going to get it, you got to do it this time around. And also, if you're looking for a place to go this summer, our high adventure bases, except for Northern Tier, are hosting a new program called the Family Adventure Camps. And that's going to be some really fun stuff going on at those places. And coming up on our radar, Paul, would you like to tell them about that phone call you had on Tuesday?
Okay, yeah. So I'm right now in the process of working with the Aldo Leopold Foundation to set up a roundtable where we can start to explore the land ethic and how that would fit in with scouting. So hopefully we'll get that one nailed down pretty soon. I don't know exactly the date for that yet, but it's in process. So I'm looking forward to that one.
And Paul also has something else on his plate that's going to be very exciting, and it'll probably be more towards the summer. We're going to interview outdoor ethics guides and their advisors and see what the challenges are with their program and what works the best for them. We also have somebody put it in chat, something about having Cub Scout activities. Well, that is on our plate, and we are planning on doing that, and probably sooner than you expect. So may not be a camporee, but it sure will be a full day of fun. And so from the Program Operations Virtual Roundtable Work Group, and Jeff Marion, and the chair of the Outdoor Ethics Subcommittee, Mr. Scott, where are you? Oh, he was on the front page. I don't see him now. But Scott Anderson, for his wonderful work with, there he is, for doing, moderating the show today. We really appreciate it. And for those of you that are interested, I put the wildfire safety moment in chat.
Also, just so all of you know, if you are interested in becoming a Leave No Trace Master Educator, we have several courses that are happening around the country this summer and into the fall. We've got one that I'm working with here in Crossroads of the West Council. We're going to be in Idaho. We have a paddling section, a non-trek section, and a trek section. It's filling up quickly, so if you want to take advantage of that, we would love to have you come be a part of this course. I put the link in the chat. It's you can sign up at utahscouts.org/LNT. Paula, I know there's a couple others happening around the country that you mentioned. Do you want to say something about those real quick?
Well, Northern Tier has a course. Philmont has a course. Scott, is Summit doing one in the fall?
No, so it is Philmont in the fall, Northern Tier in August. Greater Niagara Falls Council has one in August, and Connecticut Rivers Council has one in November, and that one will be a 2-weekend course.
And ours is also in August. I forgot to mention that. It's the 2nd through 7th of August.
If you get the Trail to Adventure guide, the links to all of those courses are going to show up in the next Trail to Adventure blog. And are also available on our Outdoor Ethics-BSA website. You can't miss it.
So those are some up and coming things that we're all excited about. So thank you for coming tonight. And Scott is going to host some social time, because last time when we met, several people hung out and just asked questions and chatted, and it was a good time.